Okay, so we're going to start this interview. And today is the 24th of December,
Right.
2017.
Mm-hmm.
We are at the house of Moshe
And
Klein.
Yafa Klein.
What's that?
Moshe and Yafa Klein.
Moshe and Yafa Klein in Alon, Shevut,
Yes.
in Gush, Etzion.
Mm-hmm.
It's Christmas Eve today.
Yes.
Actually,
Uh-huh.
it's Christmas Eve. Moshe, please tell me where you were born, what year you were born, and what kind of house you grew up in.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was born on January 29th, 1923, in Transylvania, Romania, in a city called Cluj in Romanian, Kolozsvár in Hungarian, and Klausenberg in German.
Uh-huh.
And actually, I don't have many memories in the first 5 years of my life in Transylvania. And I came to America at the age of 5 and went right into kindergarten in a non-Jewish school,
Mm-hmm.
actually, because my father was a shochet in Jamaica, Queens, and there weren't any any day schools yet in Jamaica, and I went to a public school, and I really had to deal with the fact that I didn't know the language and so on.
What was your mother tongue?
My mother tongue was Hungarian.
Hungarian.
Yes.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about this city where your family is from in Transylvania.
It wasn't a big city, but what I was told that they even had an opera in Cluj.
Okay.
In Klausenberg, and there was definitely among the Jews there was a Jewish. My grandparents were not Hasidim,
Okay.
but my father was a Hasid.
Okay.
And the important person there, who still is important, was the Admor Mitzanz. They brought him from Poland to be the Rebbe of the Hasidim in Klausenberg.
Mm-hmm.
And
so when you were born in this city, it was 1923. It was between the two world wars.
that's right.
And it was in Hungary or Romania?
At that time it was Romania, but originally the city was Hungarian.
Austro-Hungarian. So this is
Yeah.
after the fall of the Austro-Hungarian Empire.
That's right.
And all of its land are divided into the other nations.
That's right.
So you're actually born, your citizenship is Romanian. When
Right.
you were born.
Mm-hmm.
And do you have any brothers or sisters? Are you the oldest?
Yeah, I'm the oldest in the family.
Uh-huh.
I have a sister who's 2.5 years younger than I,
Uh-huh.
and she lives in Netanya. She's been here many, many years.
Uh-huh.
And I have a brother who came later on. He's 10 years younger than me. He's the youngest. His name is Shai,
Okay.
and he lives in the Galil. He's
Uh-huh.
here. And I have a brother who's still in America, living in New Jersey. He moved from Far Rockaway a year or two ago to Lakewood in
Okay.
New Jersey.
So you're 4 siblings.
That's
And
right.
all still alive.
They're all alive.
Amazing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you're the oldest. And your father and mother immigrate. Do you remember the journey?
I remember the journey we came by. Actually, my father went first
Sure.
to be able to
Absolutely.
find work, and and I came with my mother and my sister.
Do you remember leaving? Do you remember?
I remember leaving because I had a close relationship with my grandparents.
Okay.
And it was hard for me, and my mother had a lot of difficulty traveling, even on the train, and then certainly on the ship. She was sick most of the time because of the traveling. And in some ways, I was already maturing and caring for her.
And you were just 5 years old.
Yeah. Anyway, by the time I got at the age of 5 to America, I did not recall exactly how my father looked. And it was a little strange to meet him.
How long had it been since you've seen him?
What?
How long had it been since you've seen him?
2 years.
2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So you were, wow, of course.
Yeah.
So you do remember leaving. You do remember
Mm-hmm.
the journey, the voyage, plus minus. I mean, maybe not in exact detail, but in exact detail,
Yeah.
you remember. And you arrive where?
To Brooklyn, because my father had parents already here in America. They lived in Borough Park at that time in Brooklyn, and I found it difficult to relate with my new grandparents because I was very close to my mother's parents.
Who's your new grandparents?
What?
Who are your new grandparents?
Well, you want their names?
No.
I couldn't adjust it because my grandfather was very, very strict.
Your father's father?
Yes, very
So
strict.
your father's parents were already in America?
Yeah.
Okay.
And they were very, extremely religious.
So your father's family is very religious, and your mother's family?
Well, they were religious, but people who they had a furniture store, and they were leading citizens. Actually,
they were assimilated.
Yes.
And you get
one memory that I have from childhood.
Yeah.
I remember, they lived in a house. My new grandparents that had 4 steps going up, and I remember once jumping down the 4 steps, and my grandfather immediately said, "Asur likfotz, asur likfotz." And
in Hebrew?
He said it in Yiddish,
Okay.
but I can't say it in Yiddish. Asur likfotz, and that's a memory that
you have.
I couldn't get close to him. I was scared of him. And what's really interesting, that I have now a son. I have a son who's one of the best rock climbers in Israel. He teaches rock climbing. His name is Hanina. And, he does a lot of jumping and so on. And I have 2 grandsons, actually 3, because the third is a grandson who married my granddaughter.
Okay.
They were all in the Tzanachanim.
Okay.
So I find it very interesting that this memory from childhood has repercussions even today to overcome this thing that I jumped 4 steps and the extreme reaction of my grandfather.
Yeah.
But I don't want to get into that. I want to move on.
What kind of house did you grow up in? Your mother and father, what kind of house?
I'll tell you, my mother, right from the beginning, did not like America. And she wanted to go back to Europe. And because she missed...
Like many,
she didn't have any friends here.
Yeah.
And she didn't feel that too close to the family of my father. And we lived in Jamaica, they lived in Borough Park. So that was a difficulty. And, she could never really accept adjust to the to being removed from her family.
What kind of household did you grow up in as far as religion and Zionism?
Oh, I grew up in a very religious home. My mother was not that religious as my father, but my father set the tone. And in terms of Zionism, my father had a very close connection to Israel, and let me put it this way: my great-grandfather, my grandfather, were all went to Israel in order to die there, and my grandfather went from America in 1935 to Israel in order to die in Israel. And essentially, after I was living in Israel, my father also came at the age of 80. He came to Israel and he also died here. So I'm going to be the fourth generation to be buried in Israel.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And where are they buried?
Well, my great-grandfather's buried in Yerushalayim, and what is the old cemetery in Yerushalayim?
Har HaZeitim.
Har HaZeitim. My grandfather could not be buried in Har HaZeitim because he died during the Milchemet HaShichrur. So he's buried in Israel, in Yerushalayim, near the Knesset. There's a Bet Kvarot near the Knesset.
Okay.
And
your father?
My father is buried in Netanya because he said, the city where I will die, I want to be buried in that city.
Wow.
And he actually said to me, if I die in America, I want to be buried in America. I don't want to be brought to Israel.
Okay. Okay.
And that was his.
Yeah, that was his thing.
Yeah.
Wow. Mm-hmm. So that okay. Going back to your childhood. So you basically grew up in the States during the Great Depression.
That's right.
I mean, you remember that,
that
whole period.
And my father was a shochet in Jamaica.
Did the Great Depression affect him, even though he had kind of a secure job?
The job that he had was very secure, and he continued that job all his life. Yeah. Even though we moved away from Jamaica, but he continued his job. And I had the feeling that I grew up in a poor family.
Yeah.
And I just want to say that I adjusted to school very well. Actually, in the first few years of school, I was skipped twice. At that time, the year was divided into two halves, like 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B. Mm-hmm. And after I was in 1A for a half year, I was skipped to 2A. And then I was, after that, skipped again to 3A. So the first 2 years, I went ahead very quickly.
What do you remember from school, from high school, elementary school? Do you remember any anti-Semitism? Do you remember any...
I felt that I was looked down as a Jew by one or two of the teachers, but some of the teachers I felt were very kind to me.
Now,
but actually, I want to just go ahead.
Uh-huh.
When I was already in the fourth year, 4A, we moved to Brooklyn, to Brownsville, and I went to Yeshiva Chaim Berlin.
Okay.
And there, again, first they put me into a lower class according to my age, because I didn't have a yeshiva background.
Right.
But immediately they moved me to the regular class. So I was in school a year ahead of most of the children, because I had been skipped twice. And I did very well in school, in Yeshiva Chaim Berlin.
Where was Yeshiva Chaim Berlin located? Do you remember?
Yeah, Prospect Place.
Prospect?
Prospect Place.
Prospect Place. That's probably near Prospect Park.
No, but it's far from Prospect Park. Yes. And then when I finished the first grade, the elementary school, I and two other students, we still didn't have a high school a yeshiva high school in Brownsville, and we went to Williamsburg to the yeshiva Mesivta Torah V'das.
Okay.
That was the high school I went to, and that was a very much more religious than the what I was accustomed to.
Hold on a second.
Yeah.
I want to just move. Can you stand up for a sec? I want. There we go. I want to just move your chair a little. There we go.
Very good.
Hold on. Let me just adjust something here.
And it took me for a half year. It took me time to get to get adjusted to the new school.
Okay.
But after that, starting a half year later, because we entered the high school in the winter time, exactly when I was exactly 13. But after that, I sort of did very well at the Mesivta Torah.
So you were basically a pretty good student, pretty solid.
Yeah,
both in the public school system and in the yeshiva system.
Yeah, I did very well. Yeah.
You said that your father had a beit shchita.
Yeah.
And did he own it?
No. He worked there.
He worked there. And do you feel? I'm talking about, maybe like the mid-30s. You're already 10 years old, 12, 13. Do you feel American already? Do you feel?
Yeah, definitely.
You got a baseball team you like?
Yeah, definitely. I was a baseball fan immediately, and my father, I asked that he buy me a glove so that I could play baseball. Of course. I adjusted in Chaim Berlin. It was a very good school. And
you guys play ball? You guys...
We used to come to school. School began at 9 in the morning, but most of us arrived at 8 because we played ball before school started.
Excellent.
That was very good. I was already a baseball fan before I went to high school.
Now, I'll talk very briefly about baseball, but you're living in New York, and you got the Yankees, and you got the Giants, and you got the Dodgers.
And I was a Yankee fan.
You were a Yankees fan.
But my favorite player was Lou Gehrig.
Lou Gehrig, of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Not Babe Ruth.
No, Lou Gehrig.
And after Lou Gehrig died, I sort of lost interest in the Yankees, and I became a Dodger fan. And the Dodgers were doing very poorly.
Oh, they were terrible.
So
they had their wow.
They did very poorly, and in 1940 or 41, they actually won the pennant for the first time in many, many years. And
you remember that?
Sure, I remember. I was already
18.
I was out of high school already.
Yeah. And so let's get back to your story, and to your Okay, so I'm gonna lead you through some important dates, and you'll tell me what you remember about them, or where you were. Do you remember your mother and father at home at some age? You're already probably older, talking about what's going on in Europe, and I'm talking about before the war. Like the Kristallnacht, or...
Yes. Yeah, that's where finally my mother came to accept the fact that she's living in America. And, there's no way of going back.
Right.
And what happened was her father died when, I'm just trying to think of the date, but anyway, I was already in high school. Her father died.
And he was the grandfather that you
I liked him very much.
And just for the record, his name?
His name was Asher Anshel.
Asher Anshel.
Asher Anshel.
Okay.
He was a Kohen.
Okay.
And I had one aunt who was only 2.5 years older than me.
Okay.
And I remember her, and she remembered me very much. She and one of the brothers, and my grandmother went to Palestine.
They came here?
They went to Palestine, yeah. That time it was Palestine,
Right,
you can't call it Israel.
But your grandfather had already passed away?
My grandfather passed away.
So your grandmother and your aunt came here?
And an uncle.
And an uncle
came to Israel.
Do you know what year roughly they came?
I think it was around 36, 37.
36, 37?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not sure about that, but it was a pretty early time, way before the war.
Do you know where they came here? Were they settled here?
In Tel Aviv.
In Tel Aviv.
Okay. Oh, they came to Tel Aviv, and then my uncle, I had two uncles. One remained, and one came to, one remained in Europe, and one came here. And he finally lived in Tveria.
Hold on.
This uncle, when he was married.
Hold on.
And he was he was Kibbutz Deganya, which is right.
He was a carpenter, and he worked in Kibbutz Deganya.
As an outside worker, he wasn't a member.
What's your mother's maiden name?
Her maiden name was Rose. Reish Vav Zayin.
Rose. Wow, I never heard that family name.
Yeah.
And so your mother comes to terms that Europe is going to be an inferno soon.
Right.
And there's no going back.
And she stopped.
Did it have a strain on your parents' relationship?
What?
Did it have a strain on your parents' relationship, that she wasn't satisfied in the United States?
That was very difficult.
You remember
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
And then she finally came to terms with the fact that she's living in America.
That's it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, yeah. Okay. And where,
when I graduated
high school?
High school in 1940, that was the war had started already.
Right, but America was not in it.
No,
right.
39, 40.
Right.
And then I decided to go to Yeshiva College.
Okay, so
to go
Yeshiva University?
At that time it was Yeshiva College.
In the Upper West Side?
That's right.
Right, Upper West Side?
In the same place, yeah.
Right, near Columbia?
They only became a university much later after I finished
okay,
the yeshiva.
So wait.
So I went to Yeshiva College for, and we lived in Brownsville. And the first year was very difficult because I had to travel every day over an hour to get to the college. And because there wasn't enough room in the dormitory.
Okay.
But finally, in the second year, I was in the dormitory, and it was a great relief for me to be on my own, not to live at home every day. I only came home for Shabbat.
Okay, and how?
And at yeshiva, I immediately felt on my own and felt that I was doing well. And the first teacher that I had, not in the college, but in the Torah section, was Rav Dr. Shmuel Belkin. And Shmuel Belkin became the head of the yeshiva when Dr. Revel passed away. Suddenly he passed away. He had a heart attack, and Dr. Belkin was chosen. So even though I was with him for 2 years, but the second year he was very much occupied administrating the entire yeshiva. So I, at that time, didn't have any close connection to him.
Okay,
but subsequently, as the years went on, I know that I had a good relationship with him. This is important because soon I'll get to it. And then when, that same year when Dr. Revel passed away, Rav Moshe Soloveitchik passed away. He was the head of all the Rabbanim, like Rosh HaYeshiva. And finally, after a lot of debates, they brought his son, who was the Rav in Boston, Rav Yosef Dov Soloveitchik, to teach the highest shiur. And eventually, when he came in, I went into his class. That means I started learning with him in 1942. I entered the yeshiva in 1940, and in 1942, when the war was on already, I entered his shiur, and it was a great awakening in me because of his shiurim were really brilliant, and he had very strong demands upon the students.
Okay.
And I did very well with him. Eventually, I learned with him 4 years. I graduated college in 44, and I continued learning with him in 45 and 46. And I received smicha from the yeshiva.
Explain to me what that is.
46, in January
smicha.
46. What?
Smicha.
Smicha,
Yes.
I became a rabbi. I received the smicha, the degree to be a rabbi.
Thank you. I'm just asking you to explain it for those who don't understand the terminology.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
now I have a question to ask you. I'm sorry that I'm interrupting you, but you know there's a war going on.
Yeah.
There's a draft.
Right. And just as they gave all students, just as they gave to Catholic and Protestant students who were studying to become,
They left them alone.
They received the 4D, which exempted them from going to the army.
Military service.
The same way all the students in the yeshiva received the 4D.
So during the war, you're in Yeshiva University, then Yeshiva College.
No, it was still Yeshiva College.
Yeshiva College. Then it became Yeshiva University.
Much later.
And it's on the Upper West Side of Manhattan,
Right.
near Columbia College, near Columbia.
Yeah, that's right.
And you're there most of the war.
Yeah.
I'm sure you guys have rumors what's happening in Europe,
Of course.
what's happening in Palestine.
Yeah.
Are you active in some social movement? Are you, besides the yeshiva, are you active in some sort of committee or?
I was not active in, because I was not in the Shomer Adati or in Bnei Akiva at that time. But there were a few students who were very active and subsequently came to Israel.
Of course. Well, we'll get to that. That's what we're going to get to very soon.
Yeah.
Now, so when did you become a rabbi? 1946?
Yeah, January 1946.
You finished your studies?
Yeah, and then I continued at the yeshiva just to study Talmud with Rav Soloveitchik, and at the end of in the summer of 46, I applied. The yeshiva opened up a high school in Brooklyn. They had a high school in Manhattan. together with the college, and a friend of mine was already teaching in Brooklyn, and I know Rabbi Zurov was appointed to be the head of the principal of the school.
In Brooklyn.
I knew him also, and I applied to them, and they said that I could be accepted, but Dr. Belkin will have to give his okay on it. So I went to Dr. Belkin, who was now the head of the entire operation of the college, and he immediately agreed that I go. He remembered me as a student, and he was one of the people who examined me for the smicha, and he had a good impression of me. So I went, in other words, this was now in
46,
47. I taught 1 year in the high school. And then towards the end of that year, I heard that someone gave a grant of money for a student from the yeshiva college who would go to the Hebrew University. And I decided immediately that I'm going to apply for that, to get this scholarship or fellowship, whatever you call it. It was quite a good sum of money that I knew that for a year I'd be able to live in Jerusalem. And I applied to Dr. Belkin, and he immediately said, he agreed that I should be the one to go.
And?
To receive this.
And that was it? You received it?
Yes, I received it, and then I decided.
So you're coming to Palestine, to Jerusalem to study at the Hebrew University.
That's
for
right.
1 year.
For 1 year.
What are you going to study?
And then I decided that was a question what I should study, because I graduated as a math major.
Okay.
But I sort of lost interest in continuing with that, and I decided I'm going to try to study for a doctorate in Talmud.
Okay.
Now, when I came, I want to tell you about the trip, how I came.
Well, before the trip,
yeah,
it's 1946 or 47?
47. Now it was 47.
Is this before the UN partitions Palestine?
Yes, before.
Because when
that's right, before, because I was here when they voted for a partition.
So you say goodbye to your parents.
And I decided I'm going to go. Now,
is there any secret or hidden agenda that you have?
No.
Are you like, I'm going to go, but I'm going to do this. I'm going to help the underground.
No, I didn't. At that time, I was open. My thing was that my studies at the university will not be my most important thing. But I want to get to know the land. I wanted to
get your foot in.
To get into the life of
Plus, you have an aunt here, and you have a little bit of family, right?
I had an aunt and an uncle.
Right. Okay.
Now, the trip to Palestine was very memorable, because it was the first ship after the Second World War that went from America to Israel, to Palestine. And
do you remember the name of the ship?
I don't remember the name of it. It was a troop carrier. So they had two large rooms where 100 people could sleep in the room. They had a room for men and a room for women. Most of the people there who were on the boat were men.
Okay.
And most of them, the vast majority, were Arabs. I don't know what they were doing in America, but they were returning either to Greece or to Lebanon or to Palestine.
Did you have any contact with these people?
No, let me tell you, the boat left on Shabbat. So we had, those who were Shomer Shabbat had to go get on the boat the day before, and that was possible. And so I got on the boat on Friday, and I met the other people I didn't even know. There was one couple whom I knew very well from the yeshiva, Irving Fredman. His Hebrew name was Yechiel, and he came to yeshiva from Peoria, Illinois. Now, Peoria, Illinois was known because of Bradley College, and Bradley College was one of the top had one of the top basketball teams in America. Sometimes they were the champions. Subsequently, they moved to St. Louis. They're in the furniture business, and they were doing very, very well. And I got to know Yechiel Irving, who was a classmate of mine in college, but in the Hebrew studies, he was way, way behind. So he had a lot of private tutoring for the Hebrew studies. But he was a wonderful person.
He was on the boat with you with his wife?
He was with wife. They met in Hachshara. See, he became interested in Bnei Akiva, sure. And she was the daughter of a very famous rabbi. And they met in Hachshara, and they decided to get married. I was at their wedding. Her father, his name is Rav Menachem Kasher. Menachem Kasher. Now, Menachem Kasher did some work in the yeshiva, actually research. There was a genius, a Gaon from Rogachov. He was known as, and he died after the war, during the war, and his shots, he had commentaries written on his shots. And his daughter gave the shots to Rabbi Kasher, to see if there's anything worthwhile over there to publish. And he did that, and he called it the Tzofnat Paneach, the revelation of hidden learning that he got from all the comments that he wrote. Now, so his daughter Bracha married Yechiel, and they decided, without I didn't know because they lived in St. Louis, and they were on the boat, and we had a great journey. We were on the boat 2 weeks, 14 days.
2 weeks, yeah.
During Sukkot. And there was one person who was coming back to Kibbutz Chafetz Chaim. He came to America on a short shlichut in order to raise some funds for some of the things that they were doing. His name was Yitzchak Gross. Now, Yitzchak Gross, I became very close to him, and he organized us into a little kibbutz. We had about 12 or 13 people who Shomrei Shabbat, and we decided everyone brought their own food. And then we decided to put all the food together, and we'll eat all together. And the captain of the boat, instead of eating in the dining room of the boat, he gave us a room that we could use as our room, our dining room. We brought our own food.
Sure.
So, all this was arranged by Irving Friedman. He
was a wheeler and dealer.
Yeah, no, he was a businessman. He knew how to deal with it.
Yeah.
He was a great person.
Now, where does the journey to Palestine takes 2 weeks?
Now, so most of the time, we slept on the deck.
Okay.
We didn't go into that dungeon. It was like a dungeon to go.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And they were all Arabs, and we had a great time. Those who came. It was a real journey of great anticipation. Finally, we'll see Eretz Israel. And it didn't rain once in the entire 2 weeks, which was.
And where do you guys dock, in Haifa?
We docked at Haifa was the last stop. We first docked in Greece, and then in Lebanon, and then in Haifa.
Who's waiting for you in Haifa?
Well, actually, there was a representative from the university, because a few other people were going to the university.
Okay.
And there was someone there, and we stayed one night in a hotel in Haifa on the Har Carmel, and it was a beautiful view of the sea. It was just so delightful to.
That was your first night in
the first night in Israel, and then we came to Yerushalayim, and.
What's your impression of Jerusalem when you first come here?
What?
What's your first impression of Jerusalem?
Everything was beautiful. Everything was beautiful. It was a calm, peaceful city.
Do you remember? This is around September, October '47, right?
Exactly, October.
October
12th. That's when we arrived in Israel, and they brought the students. We could have been in a place after Bayit Vegan, near Bayit Vegan, but instead of going there, I had a friend from my class in yeshiva and in high school, Chaim Levine. Now, he was somewhat odd in Chaim Berlin, because he was the only student who was brought to school by a car. And sometimes there was a chauffeur in the car.
Wow, okay.
Because his father was a lawyer from Yale University and doing very well, and his mother was from a wealthy family. His mother was a Margaretan, and there was the Horowitz Margaretan matzahs from that family.
Okay.
So they were very well off.
Okay.
And they lived too far away from the yeshiva. They lived in Crown Heights.
Crown Heights.
Yeah. Subsequently, that's where the Lubavitcher Rebbe was put on Eastern Parkway.
So you get to Jerusalem. It's mid-October.
And now he was married, and he came with his wife to continue studies. Now, he didn't go to yeshiva college. He went to the seminary, to the conservative seminary in
also Manhattan. JTS.
Next to Columbia.
Yeah, the Jewish Theological Seminary.
That's right.
Exactly.
That's where he went, and he received smicha from there.
Okay.
And he came to Israel because he wanted to be an Orthodox rabbi, even though. And then he came for a year with his wife.
Okay.
And their first child was born here. And actually, I even brought a gift for his child from the family, from her family, because then she had just given birth. But during the time that I went, and till I got back, she came back to America by herself. And he remained on in order to he wanted to get smicha from someone in Yerushalayim.
Yeah.
And he was doing very well. And even at the seminary, he was one of the top students, especially in Talmudic studies, because he had the same background that I had at the Chaim Berlin and then Torah Vodas. And we were good friends. And then I found out, when I brought the gift to them, I found out that she went back. So I decided to move in with him, because he was now living in a very nice little apartment.
In Beit HaKerem?
No, in the center of your town.
Okay.
In Geula.
Rehov Geula.
So anyway, I moved in with him. Now, at one point, I'm jumping ahead. So I started the university, and since Chaim had a lot of experience also in Talmudic studies at the university, he introduced me to some of the teachers there. There were three top professors in Talmud over there. One was he wrote a Perush on the Mishnah. At the moment I can't think of his name, but it'll come to me. And then there was one, Yaakov Epstein, who was really the tops, in terms of, but he didn't speak Hebrew very well. He spoke like a Jew from Poland, and he was considered really tops. And then there was Professor Rav Asaf, Simcha Asaf. Simcha Asaf. He spoke very well. He was a Rav, and he really made a very strong impression upon me. And I attended his classes. And I told him, my background, and that I would like to do some work and to get a doctorate. So he said I should sit and prepare a proposal, what I want to do. And I spent 2 months. We're talking now about October, November, especially November, because the fighting began after the partition.
Where were you when you heard about the partition?
I was in Yerushalayim.
Where? Do you remember?
I remember. So somebody whom I got to know through Chaim, someone who was a young student at the university, but a very successful student, and doing very well in Jewish history. That was his field. So he came at midnight, because we heard about it on Motzei Shabbat midnight, that the partition plan went into existence. And he came, I was sleeping, he came to wake me up and tell me that Yesh Lanu Medina. That was he was very excited.
And then the fighting kind of started.
And then we went out and we celebrated in the streets the whole night.
Really?
Yeah, definitely. It was a great thing in Yerushalayim. Now Chaim already went back also, because Chaim contacted what is that? An infection of the liver. What is that disease? and you turn yellow.
It's hepatitis.
That's right, hepatitis, yes. And he was hospitalized, and his spirits went down, and he said he has to go back.
So what's the spirit like in Jerusalem during these days?
It's great. It was a great thing. As if everything will settle down, and will.
But it didn't.
It didn't at all. And going yet in the university did not close until December, so the university was still functioning.
And you were going every day?
I was going every day, and finally I came up with a thing I wanted. My idea was to take certain sugyot, in other words, deal with topics in the midrash and summarize them completely with all that was written on it. And I gave a solution, you know. Anyway, I presented it to him, to Professor Simcha Asaf, and he read it, and he said to me, I can't speak to you in the university because there's too much interference here. So if you come on Shabbat to my home, and he told me what time to come, I'll discuss it with you. I thought it was a very personal, very nice way of presenting, and I was very encouraged by it, and I came to him, and his thing is, we could accept you for the master's degree in that, but not for the doctoral degree, because you still have to get a background in the methods of research of the university, methods of research, which in the yeshiva you didn't have. You didn't learn that.
Okay.
And then he said, what you propose is very interesting, and it's something that just began. The Talmudic Encyclopedia just published one book of the first book of the encyclopedia, and this is what they do. They take topics according to the alphabetical order, and they develop the topics and completely from all points of view. And they're doing a very good job, but it's not something that the university would accept as research for the university.
I see.
He says, even though he says they are doing very well, very good, and an important Rav was the editor.
Now, I want to talk to you about something different.
Yeah.
Okay? We kind of... The situation in Jerusalem after the partition becomes very not good.
Yeah. So what happened was that I had to do something, and I was completely not prepared to be a fighter because I had no background in the army, right? So I decided to volunteer to work for the Magen David Adom. They had, the Magen David Adom had a place in Yerushalayim, in the center of Yerushalayim, and they had 3 drivers and 3 ambulances.
Okay.
that were functioning. And I volunteered, and I found out that 2 other fellows who were on the boat also volunteered. People whom I had no connection with before.
Yeah.
One, Moshe, I forgot his last name, he had been in the American Army, and Ben Sion was the other one. And we used to go out every time that an ambulance went out to pick people, to take them to the hospital, or they had one ambulance driver, and we were the 3 volunteers. Now, I spent most of my time there now. Especially in December when the universities closed, I was completely, that's what I did. December, January, those 2 months, I had no connection with the university. The university was closed, and this is what we were doing. And sometimes we went on certain missions that were very dangerous.
For example?
Well, of course, we used to pick up people who were injured in the fighting already, and you had to get to the place where there was fighting going on the borders, you know. And one place was especially dangerous in Yerushalayim. You know where the windmill is in Yerushalayim?
Of course,
Okay.
the Montefiore windmill.
That's right. And
Mishkanot Sha'ananim.
that's Mishkanot Sha'ananim. But after, next to the Mishkanot Sha'ananim, there's a whole section of people, and it's all going down steps.
Yeah.
And going to various.
That area is called it's called what's it called? Mamila.
No. It has a Hebrew name.
Okay. Yes, I know the area.
Yeah. Now, when you go down the steps and come up the steps, it's exactly opposite the wall of the old city.
Sure, David's Tower, that whole area there. Yeah, and they were shooting.
And when you have to go down the steps and then come up the steps with a wounded person or with someone who's sick, you're actually in firing.
You're vulnerable to snipers.
Yeah. And they would shoot from and they didn't mind. First of all, they didn't see the ambulance because the ambulance had to park on the top, and we had to go down with a stretcher to bring people up, and that was a very scary part of very dangerous.
Yeah.
After the war, this whole section was a section of poor people, mostly Yemenites, living over there. And after the war, the entire thing was rebuilt beautifully. And there are some people who have beautiful homes over there.
So you're volunteering with Magen David Adom, with the Israeli version of the Red Cross. Hold on a second.
Yeah.
You're volunteering with the Israeli with the Magen David Adom, with the Israeli version of the Red Cross. January 1948 situation.
Yeah, December, January. Those were the very difficult months.
Now, how long do you stay in Magen David Adom for?
I was there all the time.
The whole time?
I'll tell you, I'll get to the point. And one of the interesting things was to get to know British policemen. And since I worked there day and night, you know, there were the different shifts. A lot of times, some of the officers of the British Army would come to up there in a friendly way, just to talk, and you know. So we got to know some British officers, and one of them, when the thing from the patrol that tried to get to Kfar Etzion from the bottom to come up by foot to bring first of all 35 the Lamed Hay. When they came up and before, we were some of the first that heard about what happened, because they knew that they brought pictures of the Lamed Hay that were killed on the mountains. The British, some of, in a friendly way, they were, some of them were friendly to the Jews, some of them were opposed. So it depends on who came, and that's the first time that we saw that the Lamed Hay were all killed. And we found out. We also had, there was the Haganah and the Etzion, and Lehi were fighting. And sometimes a wounded person would be brought in, and we saw that if the person was not from the Haganah, the woman who was the secretary there, she'd call immediately to the Etzion and say, we have a boy of yours, or
fighter?
Yeah, בחורים, יש לנו בחורים שלכם, תבואו מהר. So they came immediately, and they would take them before, because immediately the British police came to they knew that somebody was wounded, they came to Magen David Adom to pick them up, because they were really fighting
the British.
The British. So.
Do you remember were you in? I'm talking about Jerusalem, so you must remember the massacre in Sheikh Jarrah?
Well, that was. See, that I didn't see, because that was...
No, but you were in Jerusalem.
Yeah, of course. I was in Jerusalem, of course.
I mean, that was 60 people were killed.
That's right. And they were all going to the university.
Yeah, it was a convoy.
Yeah.
Convoy. Doctors and nurses and...
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Teachers. Yeah, teachers, definitely. Definitely. That was one of the terrible things that happened during that time. So... that was a period that I participated in, and I got my feet wet.
You got your feet wet. What else did you do?
That's what I did all the time. The three of us. Somebody had to be there 24 hours.
And did you have any? Did they give you any background on first aid or anything?
I didn't have, no.
But they gave you. They taught you.
No, that wasn't the important. The important thing was to get them to the hospital.
Gotcha. So you were more just like you're not operating on anybody. You're just making to get the wounded to
get them to a safe place where they could
manpower.
Yeah.
Manpower. Now
there are all kinds of stories that I can tell, but it'll take up too much time. I wanted to get back to the kibbutz now.
To Kfar Darom.
Yeah.
How do you get to Kfar Darom?
No, just a minute.
Okay.
Kfar Darom, you have to forget about Kfar Darom in the south.
Right.
We had no connection with the Kfar Darom. Let me tell you, in February, I decided that I'm going to go to Ein HaNetziv, where I had friends from the yeshiva who already went there before I went. I came in 47, they already came in 46. And Ein HaNetziv just went on the land in 46.
Uh-huh.
So they were a brand new kibbutz, and I decided to go to I wrote a letter, and they said I should come. Now the question is how to get there. That was a big problem.
Yeah.
Because the only way that you could leave Yerushalayim or come to Yerushalayim was in an armored bus.
Right.
And I had to get permission to go, and I got that permission. And with the armored bus, I got to Tel Aviv, and then from Tel Aviv, how would I get to Ein HaNetziv? Ein HaNetziv had a truck that came every day to Tel Aviv, an armored truck. One of the drivers was a member of the kibbutz, and I knew where I was told where to meet the
driver?
The driver, and that's how I came to Ein HaNetziv in an armored truck. And during the traveling, both from Jerusalem to Tel Aviv or from Tel Aviv to Ein HaNetziv, there was no problem. We just didn't encounter any shooting. And I got to Ein HaNetziv on February the 12th. I think that, and of course it was 4 days before the attack on Tirat Tzvi. Now, Ein HaNetziv is, you have Tirat Tzvi closest to the Yarden, Stei Eliyahu, then Ein HaNetziv close to the main road going from Yericho to Bet Shan, and so on. So I got to meet the people whom I knew, and these are the people who were very, very active yet in America. Eliyahu Kenofsky, he was a real leader. He was the head of the Shomer HaDati in America. And he came from Canada. I forgot the name of the city, not Toronto, not Montreal.
Winnipeg?
It begins with an M.
With an M?
Anyway, in the center.
Montreal?
No, Montreal, not
Okay.
in the center of Canada. Not the east, not west.
Manitoba?
Manitoba, yeah. Okay, and he was a real leader, and he was very happy that I came. He accepted me like with open arms, and then there was Nachum Stepansky, and there's Moshe Kalner. Moshe Kalner is not from the yeshiva, from Yeshiva College. He's from Germany, and he got to England before the war, and then from England he got to America, and he was in Chicago. And Moshe Kalner eventually was in the U.S. Army as a medic, because he said he was a conscientious objector, didn't want to be a fighter, but so they took him as a medic. And he was throughout the war in the army. And these are three...
So what's going on in Ein HaNetziv when you get there? What's happening?
Oh, in Ein HaNetziv, everything, they were under attack all the time. Because Ein HaNetziv was the closest to the city of Bet Shan.
What happens to you when you get there?
Oh, I had to sort of get accustomed.
And? So
it took 4 days later, there was a big attack on Tirat Tzvi.
Okay.
And now each yeshuv had to function on its own.
Right.
Because you couldn't leave the yeshuv to help the others. And we heard firing all night long. And we were expecting an attack from Bet Shan, from the city of Bet Shan.
Did they give you a gun or something? Or?
No, I still wasn't... there wasn't any time yet for me to get any training.
So what are you doing?
I was with the women and children in the shelter during this night. And all night long there was shooting. All night long you heard. And we knew that it's from the area of Tirat Tzvi. And in the morning, the Maskir Pnim of Tirat Tzvi, whose name was Rav Simcha. I knew him very well after that night.
Doesn't matter, it's okay.
Okay.
It's okay.
Rav Simcha. He came with the news that they stopped the attack, and there are about 70 people soldiers from Syria that are dead all around Tirat Tzvi.
Wow.
And no one was able to get into Tirat Tzvi. So it was a tremendous victory. One person in Tirat Tzvi was killed in the beginning of the attack.
This is February 48.
This was on the 16th of February, 1948. And actually, in the end, it turned out that this was the main battle against the area of Bet Shan, against the kibbutzim in the area, and they never tried again, although we were constantly in awaiting attack.
Sure, absolutely. So how long are you in Anati for?
So then, once the immediate attack was over, I began learning how to use arms, and actually I even used. I started using arms, but we only started getting weapons from Czechoslovakia after the state came into existence.
But we're not there yet. Yeah. So
anyway,
after Tirat Tzvi, you get a little accompanied with, familiar with some weapons. You go back to Jerusalem after this?
No, I stayed. I stayed in Ein Hatziv. I figured the university is closed.
Right, so you're in Ein Hatziv.
I'm in Ein Hatziv, and I began getting interested in what they want to do, what the Americans who were in Ein Hatziv wanted to do. They wanted to establish their own kibbutz. Now, over there they had a group of English people, the Americans, South Africans, and maybe one or two from who came from Europe, who spoke English, from England.
From England, okay.
Yeah. And I sort of joined them. Let's put it that way, that I'm with them. Okay. And we're going to establish our own kibbutz. That was the idea. And so this was in February. Then in Pesach, that's when just right after Pesach, Ben Gurion, they declared their own.
Well, they declare on May 14th, yeah.
Yeah, May 14th, because the British were leaving May 15th.
Right.
And that was a great.
Where were you when
in Ein Hatziv? It was Erev Shabbat, and we heard all this over the radio.
And there was no attack on you guys that day or night.
What?
There was no attack on you guys that day or night.
No. The big attack was against Tirat Tzvi.
Right.
The
Syrians.
And then, little by little, the Arabs who were living in small groups in Bet Shan left, but the city of Bet Shan did not leave.
And
now, just a minute, they did not leave, and we were still awaiting the possibility of an attack. And during that time, Haganah decided to build a trench outside of Tirat Tzvi, not volunteers, but members from all the kibbutzim in Bet Shan and in the Emek Israel were sent there to dig this trench. And I was sent by Ein Hatziv because I was not a great worker yet.
Oh, you weren't?
No, I wasn't. I wasn't considered a productive worker.
Gotcha.
So they in Tirat Tzvi, and it was getting really. Emek Bet Shan is very hot.
Very hot.
In the summertime.
They say it's hotter than Eilat.
Yeah.
So tell me, What about Kfar Darom? How does the Kfar like?
Oh well, now you're jumping way ahead.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Okay. So this was.
Do you like Ein HaNetziv? Do you like it there?
Yeah, I liked being. It was very exciting to be there, to participate in to the defense of the country. And I got to know the people, and I actually on Pesach. This was before the state came into existence.
Yes.
They asked me to be the Mesader of the Pesach for the whole kibbutz. I was the only rabbi there who had smicha.
Yeah.
And so I became sort of productive to be able to do something that others could not do. And when they declared the state, it was very tense to find out, especially America. Well, America accepted the new state, and we only found out after Shabbat, and it was a great surprise that immediately America accepted the state of Israel. That was a great moment.
President Truman.
What?
President Truman.
Yeah. That Truman himself was a big surprise.
Yes, he was.
He turned out to be a great president,
yes.
Even though my initial, when Roosevelt died, my initial was that, and Truman is the president. I couldn't understand.
Nobody knew who he was.
Yeah. Who's going to be? What's going to happen to America? Because the war still wasn't over yet.
The buck stops here.
Yeah.
Wasn't that his?
That's right.
His phrase. The buck stops here.
That's right.
Now tell me. The state of Israel is declared on the 14th of May.
Yeah.
15th of May, the war escalates completely. The Jordanian League is in. The Egyptians are attacking from the south.
Yeah. Right.
Are you in Ein HaNetziv throughout the whole war?
Yes, I was in Ein HaNetziv. Just a minute. Not throughout the whole war.
Okay.
But certainly till Sukkot.
Okay.
Now, besides that, there were a few things. The main thing of the kibbutzim in the Emek Bet Shan was to keep the Arabs. The Arabs left. In May 15th, we were expecting that now the Bet Shan, the Arabs in Bet Shan, there were 10,000 Arabs in Bet Shan, that they would
revolt,
really attack, just as in the whole country.
Sure.
Well, everything was quiet, even though during that period from the attack on Tirat Tzvi until the state was declared, there were very tense times, and we actually built a trench, an underground
bunker,
for the women and children.
Sure.
And we even worked on Shabbat.
Did you? Yeah.
Because the Haganah told us to expect an attack that night, and they didn't attack. And then when the British left, we were sure that it will be attacked, but there was everything was quiet. So scouts had to go to try to find out what's happening in Bet Shan. And they got to Bet Shan and found that the entire city is empty. Now, when the British left, the entire city of Bet Shan left also. So from that moment on, everything, eased up,
So those Arabs from Bet Shan probably ran to Syria and Lebanon.
I don't know where they went to.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And where are you later on in the war? Like what's
Now,
yeah.
now, the way that when they started to build an army now, and at that time during the war, those settlements that are under attack and on the border, they didn't take. They did not draft soldiers.
Right, because you guys are on.
We had to stay there.
Sure.
So that was that way. And the next big episode was there was another kibbutz from the kibbutz Dati that went on settlement, shluchot. So now we had 3 kibbutzim, and shluchot was the 4th kibbutz of the kibbutz Dati that was on. And during the day, when the settlement was, I participated in that, and I slept on the ground over there till the morning. And Shluchot was established, but Shluchot, they had members who were in a place preparing to go on settlement. They didn't come yet for a long time until they put up some buildings where they could stay. So during Rosh Hashanah, they were there, but one of the days of Rosh Hashanah, I went over there to be the Chazan for Musaf.
Uh-huh.
That's one, and I was there the whole day, the day of the settlement. So that was the 4th.
Kibbutz Shluchot.
Yeah, and Shluchot has a lot of Americans who came to Shluchot subsequently. And then the kibbutz Dati had the idea that we can join with the members of Kfar Darom who had to leave the settlement.
Where is Kfar Darom, the settlement?
The settlement was in the south.
And they had to leave because of the Egyptians.
No, because the Egyptians passed by. One tank got into Kfar Darom, and it was stopped with a Molotov cocktail. That's what they used to call it at that time.
Yeah, Molotov cocktail.
Yeah, and the tank was in, and those in the tank either got away or one died.
So they decide to resettle Kfar Darom where?
First of all, Kfar Darom was taken out during the first ceasefire in June, and they were taken out in the middle of the night. And now basically the people from Kfar Darom were very, very young. They were 18, 19, maybe 20, maybe some of them, but not more. And they held out for a very long time after the Egyptians came up north on the road. And they made a proposal to us that if you can join with those young people from Kfar Darom and to a new settlement, not in the south, but and they proposed a settlement that's west of Yavne, Kibbutz Yavne. There was nothing on the other side of the
Gedera.
Of the main. No, Gedera was east.
East, okay.
Of Yavne, and there was a coastal road that went up to Ashkelon. That was the first.
Okay, so who?
So to go beyond the coastal road, west of the coastal road, which basically was between Yavne and eventually 7 years later, the city of Ashdod was built over there. So basically, we went on a Shevut on the other side of the coastal road, and the beach, what over there where they built Ashdod, that was our beach.
Nice.
And it was very important because one of the things that we developed after we went on a Shevut was to sell sand for building.
Okay. Make cement and stuff like that.
Yeah, to mix with the cement. It's called zivziv.
Okay.
And that was one of the things that we did.
So you leave Ein HaNativ.
Yeah. Now, in order to leave, we had to. What they did was they took the members of Kfar Darom to Yavne, that they should settle in Yavne because eventually they'd be
settled somewhere nearby.
Settled nearby. And the proposal was that we join them.
Okay.
And for a new kibbutz.
Okay.
So I was sent as one of the first people to go to Yavne to meet
this group.
The group from Kfar Darom.
Okay.
And so I was the first from the American group to meet the young people from Kfar Darom. It was a very interesting thing because these are basically children that were brought during the war to Israel through Aliyat HaNoar.
Yeah.
And they were in Kfar HaNoar Adati. So they were for many years in Kfar HaNoar Adati as children growing up, with the idea that eventually they'd form a group to be a kibbutz.
Yeah.
So that was after Sukkot. After Sukkot, I went, and I'm trying to think if there was one other person that came with me to meet them. And eventually we decided that's what we're going to do. We're going to meet. We'll join the members of Kfar Darom. And little by little, people that started coming. I was the first one to go and to meet them, and then others came to Yavne, little by little. Eventually we'll go on Shevut. And meanwhile, once some more people came, next to Yavne there was a building which was built to be the yeshiva of Yavne.
Okay.
There was a plan to have a yeshiva, but the building was not finished. There were no doors or windows. The frame of the building was finished. The roof was finished, but it wasn't. It wasn't done. It wasn't done to prevent rain from coming in.
Okay.
So that's where we began. We settled down during that winter to be there before we went on a Shevut. I mean, when the rains would end, we would go from Yavne to across, without a road, there was a dirt road, to the coastal road, and then go on to settle there.
So when do you actually, מתי אתם עולים לשטח? When do you actually...
So we actually had to wait the whole winter.
Break land.
Between Purim and Pesach. That's in between that time, between Purim and Pesach, I don't remember the exact date, we went on a settlement over there, and we put up all kinds of, buildings that can be put up in one day. And that's and we call that place Kfar Darom. So there's a mix-up between Kfar Darom and the Negev and this Kfar Darom. So that was the initial name. Subsequently, the government said that you can't call it Kfar Darom, you have to call it Bnei Darom. They suggested the name Bnei Darom because we want to leave that place of Kfar Darom. Eventually, maybe we'll have a settlement there.
Yeah, and yeah.
We'll go back there.
And how long did you stay in Bnei Darom or Kfar Darom? How long?
I or
you?
Oh well, first of all, so this was in 1949 between Purim and Pesach, and I stayed there and I worked there. The main job that I had was to work on the beach, to load trucks who came to take sand for building. The war was still officially on.
Right.
Yeah, and
excuse me. Oh, sorry.
okay.
Okay, the war is still officially on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it was an interesting winter to live in one building, men and women. There were some married couples, and had to make the division to work, to have privacy.
Yeah.
Anyway, it worked out.
It worked out. How many people were you? Roughly.
I don't know.
This cable, yeah.
I don't remember
50,
how many.
40, 20.
Oh, there were about 40.
Okay.
I think, yeah,
Okay.
altogether. I forgot to mention one thing.
Please,
that
please.
In Ein HaNetziv, among the group that came from America, there were two women. One was Yehudit Freilich, and the other was Rachel Eitman. Rachel is from Chicago, and Yehudit was from New York. And they both married people from Ein HaNetziv.
Okay.
Because Ein HaNetziv was a very young settlement. And one of them was Tzvi Kaspi.
Okay.
Yehudit Freilich married Tzvi Kaspi. And Tzvi Kaspi eventually came on shlichut to the Sachnut. He was a very bright guy, you know, very.
Yeah.
And he worked in the Sachnut in New York as a shaliach. And when he finished that stint of the shlichut, he came back and he was accepted in the Foreign Office to work in the Foreign Office of Israel.
Yeah, foreign ministry.
And eventually, his first place was in France, in what is the southern seaport in France? Marseille.
Nice?
No, Marseille.
Marseille.
That was his first job. And then they came to America eventually. And eventually, he was the consul in New York.
Okay, nice.
Tzvi Kaspi.
Nice.
That was many years later, many years later.
Now tell me, I want to get back to you about the end of the war. In the end of the war in 1949, you're in Kfar Darom.
Yeah.
Bnei Darom.
Bnei Darom.
How long do you stay there for?
Well, I sort of saw myself as being one of the members that would build the Kfar Bnei Darom. Now, in 1950, Eliyahu Kanofsky said to me, look, we have to send a shaliach to America, and I think you're the best one suited for it. Now, to go back to America as a shaliach from the kibbutz in order to get more people to come from the Tnuah, from Bnei Akiva.
Bnei Akiva, yeah.
Now, I went as a shaliach in 1950, just before Pesach. It was after Purim, after Pesach. And I went, and then there were a few other shalichim sent. Two from Ein HaNetziv were sent as shlichim. One is Shlomo Reutlinger, and the other was Avram Ehrlich.
Uh-huh.
Avram Ehrlich, subsequently when he came back, joined Yavne. He married a girl in California, and he came back to Yavne. He didn't come to Kfar.
What about you? So you
Just a minute, I'll get to me. And Shlomo Reutlinger had parents whom he hadn't seen from way before the war.
Uh-huh.
Because they got to, from Germany, they got to America.
Okay.
And he stayed with them,
Uh-huh.
and he went to Brooklyn College and got a degree, and then subsequently got a doctorate in economics in North Carolina, University of North Carolina. So he's still around, by the way.
His name?
Shlomo Reutlinger. Reutlinger, yeah. Reut, like red, Reutlinger. He got that. He married in America, and he worked for the World Bank as an economist.
Mm-hmm.
Very good, and he worked all over. And then his two children came to Israel.
Yeah.
And finally, he and his wife came to Israel after he retired. So, he's still alive. His wife died.
What about you? You told me that you.
Oh, now what happened
send you
with
to the
me?
States.
I worked in the States, in California, in the summer camp for Bnei Akiva, and then I was sent to work in Chicago. Chicago had a very dynamic group of Bnei Akiva, very dynamic, and subsequently a lot of them came to Israel. And many lived in Bayit Vegan, and many were educators. Two of them taught in the Yeshivat Bnei Akiva in Bayit Vegan, and one who got a degree in education became the principal of also in Bayit Vegan of the high school for girls.
Pelach?
No, not Pelach, not the other one. It's very interesting because you'll it's a Bnei, not exactly a Bnei Akiva, but it's what are the girl high schools are called?
I forget, but it's fine.
No, just a minute. It's very important.
Okay.
Because my daughter. Oh, you don't know that I got married.
Well, I want to get to that. Yeah.
Yeah, my daughter learned in that high school.
Ora?
Ora is my daughter. Yeah, Ora. That's where she went to high school. See, this is the difficulty that I have.
It's the memory.
The word, I can't get the high school of Chorev.
Chorev in Jerusalem.
Yeah.
Yes, I know.
You heard of that high school?
Sure.
It's a candidate now to become the best high school in Israel this year.
Now, when did you get married?
Oh, now I was in Chicago, and then I was also at the Hachshara in New Jersey. These were the three places where I was stationed. At the Hachshara, and in the Hachshara I met my wife. She was one of the people from Bnei Akiva who actually came to Hachshara. And she was much younger than I. But when the time came for me to return to Israel, I said to her that if she comes to Israel, she should come to my kibbutz. And she did that. And that's where I got to.
Is that where you guys got married?
Yeah, later on in Bnei Darom.
What year did you get married?
In 53. You see, this was 51. I came back at the end of 51 to Israel. And then 52, she came in 1952 in September to Israel, and she came to Fargaro. And then she didn't speak Hebrew at all. So she went to, instead of staying in the kibbutz immediately, she went to an ulpan to study Hebrew for a half year. And she did very well. Then she picked up the language. In the end, she came out speaking beautifully.
Yeah.
And so that's, and after she came back from the ulpan, she was. This was in the beginning of the summer of 53. I mean, she had been already in Israel 1 year, from the 52 to 53, and right after the Chagim, we got married in 1953.
And I also read, because before I come to interview you, I get a little brief.
Yeah.
You're also one of the founding members of Alon Shevut. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, I have to tell you why we left the kibbutz. We left the kibbutz because things were not working out so well, and mostly the Americans did not remain in Alon Shevut.
Okay.
And Eliyahu left before me. He already had 3 children. He went back to America to study economics.
Yeah.
And he went to Columbia and got a doctorate in economics in Columbia. And then I went about a half year later back to America with the idea that I would go to get a doctorate in psychology. I felt, even though I was a math major, but I felt that too much time had gone by, and I thought I could manage to get a doctorate in psychology more. And one of the things that I did, because I had still a good reputation at Yeshiva College, which now was a university, I went to Dr. Belkin, and they needed somebody to be the head of the dormitory. They built a brand new building, a 6-story building with 300 beds for a new dormitory, right by the yeshiva, Yeshiva University. So I undertook to be the head of that. I opened the new dormitory, and I got to know all the students who subsequently, many came to Israel.
Nice.
One of them is Rav Riskin from the Efrat. He was the 4 years that I was the head of the dormitory. He was a student there. He came in the first year that I was there. He came in without any background in Jewish learning, and he. What year did you
break ground here in Alon Shevut? What year is that? 19?
Just a minute. That was from 57 to 61. I was the head of the dormitory. I got the doctorate, and then in 61 I went to start working as a psychologist. I went to Poughkeepsie, the Hudson River State Hospital.
Sure.
You know that?
I know Poughkeepsie. So.
Poughkeepsie.
Yeah.
And I was there for a year and a half, and then the state, they built a new hospital in the Bronx. Brooklyn had a hospital, Queens had a hospital, Manhattan had a hospital, a state hospital, and Bronx did not have. They built one in the Bronx, and the idea was that there will be new a new way of looking at it. It will be a hospital for residents of the Bronx.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, and I was accepted as the chief psychologist there, the head of psychology. So it began right from the beginning. Eventually, when I came here, we had 20 apartment, and New York made a contract with the medical school of Yeshiva University, Einstein Medical School. And Einstein Medical School was right in that area. And I remained, and a professor from Einstein became the head of the hospital. So they were going to do something radically different. And it was an open hospital, completely. A psychiatric hospital was completely open. The bus came in, and the patients were on the grounds, and they were able to leave, as they wish. And then either they'd come back.
It's a whole different way of looking at treating patients.
That's right.
Are you more of a Jung guy, or are you more of a Freudian?
No, I'm not Freudian. I'm not Jung either. I'm more of the modern way of looking at humanistic psychology.
Okay.
Anyway, so that's how. So during that whole period, I lived in Far Rockaway.
Okay.
Because I had friends in Far Rockaway, and it was near the beach, and I used to travel from Far Rockaway to the Bronx.
Sure.
And then...
When do you come back to Israel?
Now, I came back in '67, before the '67 war. By the way, I was in the Bronx state from '63 to '71.
From what? From you were where?
I was the head of psychology. The new director of the hospital gave me the title Director of Psychological Services. Now, he went away from the old way, the way the things were in the state. Director of Psychological Services. I was there from '63 to '71, 8 years. And then I came back in '71, that's when I came back. And when I came back, I had a friend in America, Rabbi Lenny Rosenfeld. He was the head of Jewish education in New York City, the Bureau of Jewish Education, or the JEC, Jewish Education Committee. But the JEC changed the name to Bureau of Jewish Education.
Okay.
And he was one of the heads over there. Eventually, he was the head of the whole Bureau of Jewish Education, and he was a close friend of mine.
Okay.
And when he came in '70, he came to Israel, and he was looking around where to settle, and he heard about Alon Shevut. He saw the place, and he lived temporarily in Yerushalayim, and he decided he's going to come here. So I was in touch with him, and the first day that I was back, he took me and my wife to see the place. It was like a dust bowl. It was
Dust Bowl, that's an interesting phrase. Like the Oklahoma Dust Bowl.
It was very hot, and nothing was the building was going on. It was all building going on.
Sure.
So we somehow felt that it won't work out. We can't come. I wanted to come because I wanted my children to grow up in a new settlement.
Yeah.
To be like pioneers also. And for a while we actually bought an apartment in Yerushalayim and lived in the apartment for a half year. And this was in 1973, the beginning.
Which neighborhood?
We came in in 1971, and in 73 we moved into a new apartment in Yerushalayim, in the German colony, Mosheva Germanit. And we were there for a half year, and then somehow we felt, especially my wife felt that very deeply, that we should come here.
Okay.
And we got one of the last
Lots.
houses.
Uh-huh.
This house we built here. We built it.
Yeah.
And so we got here in the beginning of 73, and we lived in 80 square meters in a little apartment here. And then we built this house, and in 77, that's when we moved into the house. In 77.
40 years.
40 years, that's right. And we're here. Now, my daughter went to high school in Bayit Vegan, because we had no high school here. We just
Yes.
had. She was in the first class. My daughter was in the first class in the school.
Uh-huh.
She came in the third grade, and that was the leading class of the school. And the school was still in one of the apartments over here. And then when the school was built, she finished the school in, let me see, 78. Our two children were born in America. My son is called Hanina. He was 6 years old when my daughter Aura was born.
Okay.
So that we came, and Aura was in the first class in the school here.
And I see also, first of all, I'm gonna.
When I came back, I decided to stop being an administrator in the field of mental health, but to teach.
Okay.
So I started teaching at Bar Ilan.
Okay.
I got a position as Marse Bachir in Bar Ilan, and I was for 6 years I was the head of the from the second year to be the head of the clinical and psychology department. And I worked in Bar Ilan until I had to retire. And that was in 92.
92?
92. And I've been in retirement since then.
Would you have continued?
25 years. I wanted to continue, but they said they had a very strict thing that people have to retire. They're just 68, and they kept me on 70.
Okay.
And I retired, and that's 25. I'm already retired 25 years.
Wow. So it's actually Professor Moshe Klein.
No, I'm not a professor. I didn't.
Okay.
I wasn't promoted to that,
Okay.
but because I made my decision that I would be involved more in the treatment rather than research.
Sure.
Okay, and in the universities, it's the research that counts.
Sir.
Okay.
Thank you. I really appreciate your time, and thank you for sharing your story with us.
Yeah, I'm just trying to. I'm going to tell you something very interesting. You know, my daughter went to high school in Yerushalayim.
Uh-huh.
It's called the Chorev, but the high schools, the religious high schools, are called something.
Okay.